With me, I have Professor David Aworawo, Professor of International Relations and Strategic Studies at the University of Lagos. Yemi Adamolekun, Executive Director in Office of, and Jide Ologun, a legal practitioner and national development advocate. Well, thank you very much for showing up again this week.
Thank you.
Well, we have had three guests. We had Sowore, who came into the country and he was arrested, detained briefly, but his passport has been returned. He says he's here for a court case. He's also here for, a protest in October, and that nobody can tell him not to come to his country. We also had, a fellow of the Nigerian Academy of Pharmacy talking about the high cost of drugs in Nigeria and how an initiative introduced via an executive order in June by President Tinubu 3 months later has not taken effect. Drugs are still very expensive. Multinationals have left Nigeria, where he had a very diplomatic view of the subject. But we, the people who go to pharmacies, we know how expensive it is now to exist in Nigeria. It's called the cost of existence crisis that Nigeria faces. But he also talked about, association things, pharmacies versus doctors, and a major event that they are planning to have on Thursday. And then finally, we went to Benin, where we spoke with the director of the Femicide campaign, Joyce Daniels, who says, well, they are not threatening violence. They are just saying that government has to provide a level playing field, and that the police and INEC should not continue to behave as if they want to favor the other party. Those are the three major issues that we have treated today. Let me start with you, Yemi Adamolekun.
Well, okay. Let's start with Joyce, actually. And yeah, it was good to see Joyce on TV. Your banter with her that you know as a speaker.
I know her as a professional MC. Now she's in politics.
She is. She actually ran, she wanted to run for local government chairman.
Oh, okay. Very good.
But I think what's interesting for me in the posturing of PDP not to sign a peace accord is basically doing what I think all of us would know to be the state of play. We sign these things all the time, but political parties continue to behave badly. They have people that they engage, they arm to cause disruptions during elections, scatter ballot boxes. I mean, last year is not too far that we saw footage of people threatening people at polling units and police looking, doing absolutely nothing. And so I think, and yet peace accords were signed. And so PDP is just saying, look, we're not going to go ahead with this sham because we know nothing is going to happen. The police are not going to abide by this accord. And the ruling party, i.e. the APC, has more or less postured that we're going to win Edo at all costs. So I think doing that and basically saying we're not going to go ahead with the sham is a statement in and of itself. But the unfortunate flip side of it is basically also communicating to, if you do anyhow, you see anyhow. And so there's almost a, not an endorsement, but I think the whole idea of protecting your vote by all means then has a new level to it when you don't think that you have protection by the body organizing the protest, i.e. the government. So police is supposed to provide security. You don't trust them to provide security, so you're telling people to secure their votes themselves. But I think it's not any different from what we have in Nigeria right now. Nigerians are providing their own security. I think it's the governor of Katsina, Segun Adeniyi, had an article at the back page of This Day a few days ago where he talked about it, because the governor is basically saying that any community that wants to learn self-defense, that the state will provide them with arms so they can protect themselves. And his point was, and this is the governor's point, that he was going to a particular village, that it took him 2 hours off the main road to get to the village. So if something was happening in the village and they called for help, by the time any kind of security gets to them, people would have been killed, raped, and what the case might be. But I think what's fundamental really is the continued abdication of the federal government, of its duty to provide security. And the sooner we start putting that up front and center, and this is not about elections. I mean, I saw the clip from Governor Baseki talking about 10 members of PDP have been arraigned. Now, this is a sitting governor. How much more citizens that don't even have the same kind of clout that he does? But for him, it's in the context of PDP members. And we're saying, last week, as I said on the show, we have children who are in jail and have not been charged. Children, 14, 15, 16-year-olds. So this is not about PDP or APC. That's Obaseki's current concern. My current concern is the fact that we're jailing minors without charging them. Or why are we even jailing them in the first place? Or charging them in the first place for protesting? So PDP's issue is a good spotlight on Nigeria's larger issue of the fact that the state chooses who it wants to provide security to. I think you made the point at some point that we have police officers carrying bags and doing domestic work, and the work of security that they're not doing. On pharmacists, yeah, I mean, I don't know why anybody is surprised that the policy 3 months later, we haven't seen the light of day. It's one of the many policies that hasn't seen the light of day. There's really nothing to say about that. It's just a state of this government. You make policies that don't quite work. And then on Sowore, I think, when a government, I think it was very good. I don't know what happened backstage that they released him early. But I think whoever from above gave the orders, I think chose to be smart. Because if Sowore is still in custody today, Fearless in October will have started today. And we saw it because his supporters were already at Muritala Mohammed Airport once they learned that he was arrested. So again, the same thing that happened, and I'll repeat this again. Notice was given for an October 1 protest. We spent time quoting traditional and religious rulers. October 1 is about 3 weeks, 2 weeks away, maybe. And we're arresting a prominent opposition political party member. We haven't done anything. Pharmacists are saying what you signed 3 months ago is not in focus. We haven't done anything about that. October 1 is around the corner.
Mr. Ologun, I come to you now.
Thank you very much. Let me start from the Sowore's angle also. I expect that by now we should have the watch list for the oil thieves, so that wherever we find them, we also arrest them to profile them on the economic terrorism they have unleashed on the country. And I quite enjoyed the expressions of Sowore saying, he's not afraid to come and drink water from the lake in his village. This is his country. He's not running away. And if there are issues in the land that will prompt people to protest, and if he needs to be part of it, why not? And he also spoke to the fact that we need to clearly define what treason stands for. And globally, it's been expressed that protest is not and can never be treason. And that brings us to focusing on the main issues in the land. If there is hardship, there is hardship. And he also spoke about the reflection you find in the mirror. So we cannot claim that there is hardship on the part of the people, obviously, and the leadership appears to be enjoying all the luxuries and flamboyance that we have in the land. And going back to Edo State, I'm a bit worried that the sitting government, PDP, is apprehensive because, and that speaks to this issue we have been speaking about, which is the relationship between the federal and the states. You realize that PDP in Edo State appears not to trust the police for now, because the police is under the direct supervision of the federal government. And the impression created is that the mighty powers at the federal level may be taking advantage of that to interfere in the elections coming up in Edo. And speaking to the peace accord that has been signed by parties, it didn't start today. But my big question is that after all the agreements are signed to have peace, do we really have peace? And if eventually we don't have the peace, who will be held responsible? And I think we need to come to the point where we don't create the impression that some people can cause violence in the land and get away with it. You know, in the elections in this country, I doubt if we have had any, perhaps after the 90 Hope 93, that there are not reports of violence, but what happens to the accused persons and those who were arrested is a big question. And I wish them the best at the polls. And of course, talking about the pharmaceutical industry and the executive order of the president. When you talk about executive order, one-time president of the US brought it to the limelight talking about Lincoln. And indeed, it primarily focused on making ministerial officers accountable to the people that come and present your report of performance. And by virtue of Section 5 of the Nigerian Constitution 1999 as amended, the executive powers are vested in the president who can make an order. And the other is that, exactly, let's have an improvement, perhaps renewed hope in the pharmaceutical sector. And the reverse appeared to be the case because the cost of these drugs are going haywire. And what I see is that we have not attended to the fundamental issues at the macro level that will give breadth to this executive order and make the implementation successful. And except and until we do that, it will just remain an order. And Aesop, a wise man, said at a time that after much is said and done, more is said and done. So we need action. That in project management, you need to follow through to ensure that the project is successfully completed.
Well, Prof, over to you now.
Yeah, I would like to take the Sowore story, his comments, along with the pharmaceutical, industry crisis, because they are linked. The reason people are organizing protests is because things are not as they ought to be in Nigeria. The suffering out there is extensive. And under this condition, protests will just be regular things that will take place. Sowore's arrest, fortunately, it was for a very short time, and then released. But we can also, talk about others who have been arrested, who have been charged for treason. One begins to ask, are we actually making progress or we are retrogressing? People are, protesting and then they are arrested and then they are being charged for treason. People have shouted and shouted and the government does not seem to listen. That is very disturbing. Then regarding the executive order, specifically as far as the pharmaceutical industry is concerned, my view goes beyond just the executive order and what it seeks to achieve. It seeks to bring down the prices and all that, but the broader picture is what concerns me more, which is these drugs that the order will make possible to import without some duties and expecting that the prices will be lower than what they are now. What about the action to ensure that drugs are manufactured locally and that what these industries that have left were doing, something else replaces it so that we can manufacture our drugs here? I say all of these things because I'm conscious of what creating wealth, productivity means for a country and how detrimental just importing here and there also is. By the way, I congratulate Nigerians on the Dangote refinery finally bringing out fuel. That the cabal, all those who didn't want it to work, they have eventually, at least for now, there is triumph over them. Again, it's tied to it, which is that we must produce here. If we produce here, we create jobs here. And then productivity expands here. Even if the price is the same as the one they are importing, the fact that they are produced here gives us security. When the war between Ukraine and Russia broke out, countries had money to buy wheat, but they didn't find wheat to buy. That's what we talk. When we talk about food security, it's not just that we are able to afford it, but that we are able to have it under our control. Those are important things. And of course, fortunately, for the prices that have been revealed, the refinery, I mean, the fuel will be less. I'm talking about it because, a fortnight ago, I almost didn't come for the program because I didn't have fuel.
I was even told today you were looking for fuel.
Yes, I was a bit worried. I didn't want to go.
I said, no, Prof should come
and I can't go and fight
to the island.
In the filling station. So the fact that you have something under your control, even if it's the same price as when you are bringing from abroad, and the fact that it creates jobs within the country. Forget about nonsense some so-called influencers are writing. I just get angry. Idiots are writing, they are calling themselves influencers, are talking about export, import. Who are they talking about? The refineries government owns. Port Harcourt, Warri, Kaduna, the 450,000 barrels per day that they could produce. Not one. Anyway, that is so. The pharmaceutical, the executive order to ensure that drugs come in cheap, it should be for a short term. There should be an addendum to that, and that is that what are the plans, programs, policies to ensure that these things are manufactured here? I have not heard anything about that.
Not all influencers are idiots.
Yeah, not all
idiots are influencers.
That is true. But there are many people just writing nonsense. If you see the things they write, some people are going to my financial analyst. Show us your.
No. But I think what is important. Sorry, I think what's important though, and we shouldn't shy away from wherever you are on the Dangote divide, is a lack of transparency, both on NNPC side and Dangote side. And I think we need to be very clear about that. Now, Dangote, for example, and this is just as an aside, is in a free trade zone, which is tax exempt and all of that. Now we're going to actually, so technically he's not in Nigeria.
Yeah.
But we are taking trucks to as we do to, I think, Togo or wherever that we send fuel to get fuel from him. Yeah. Nobody has said anything about the price that we're buying from him. So we're selling crude to him in Naira. Nobody has said what price it is that he's selling PMS to us, because PMS is...
He has also said he will sell to us in Naira.
I know, but my point is also, why I'm saying this lack of transparency is that if he is not transparent about the price that he's selling, then it doesn't even allow us as Nigerians to be able to calculate this whole subsidy thing. Would it not be easy? If Dangote says my selling price is 1,200 and we go to the pump and it's 900 naira, will we not know that subsidy is 300 naira?
Of course.
So I'm saying that regardless of where we are on this divide, the issues lie both with NNPC and Dangote. But because Dangote is maybe a private company, we should face our government, i.e. our minister plus our MD that continue to be...
No, I think we'll get all that because today we had 980 something of them.
What is certain is that Professor Aworawo will be able to buy fuel.
Yes.
On Aworawo.
And that we have an industry that will create jobs here. Yes. And we have something that will have a bit of control over if there is crisis outside. Those are the things I'm focusing on. We'll come to the price where they've said 980 or something.
The other issue I wanted to mention, sorry, that I talked about the trucks, is what it's going to do to the Lekki access. Because Dangote refinery was not designed to be trucking fuel inside of Nigeria by road. Just saying.
Well, Governor Sowore has said we should not worry about traffic.
Our roads widen.
No, he says Lagos State government is prepared.
Yes. Are you going to widen the road? Are you suddenly, all the potholes on the road, are you suddenly going to fix it by tomorrow? Let's be honest.
Let's see what they do. But one other thing to add, Yemi, is this. The law, the provisions that all those economic zones, they have been modified over the years to allow them also sell in Nigeria.
I'm not saying it should. I'm just saying that the logistics of it is different.
That's what I'm saying.
For someone who is now supposedly...
From the business angle, I'm a whole brief for Dangote. If you monitored what he went through to even arrive at this stage, and I must congratulate him for driving this project to conclusion relatively. It's not been easy.
Did I say
indeed. It was easy? No, I'm not saying that. I'm just, holding brief for him.
Adding to what we are saying.
Exactly. Indeed, if the blending plant near Malta exists, that business is being crippled by Dangote entering the space. And I believe and suspect that was why negotiation had to go in, that come.
Let me say
so it's still about the cabal and the oil thieves and those who have benefited so hugely from the economic terrorism against Nigeria. So I've seen him boldly confronting them. So the issue of pricing, that may come along the line. And I suspect also that this may ease the pressure on Forex because eventually he succeeded by getting the president to give an order, like giving crude in naira.
I don't know.
No, I mean all this that if you
sells the most expensive cement in the world.
See, if you
so I don't understand.
It's
this
because
whole,
of the market environment.
Okay.
What we look forward to
All
is
right.
that eventually we come to a point when we begin to have it easier in the country. Because don't forget that the scammers dwell so much on this.
The scammers have still not yet been arrested.
The thing is that all of you will get fuel to buy.
But the scammers have still not yet been arrested. Exactly, at what cost?
I will passionately appeal to government to allow institutions function the way they ought to. And we should be able to also have individuals who will say, let me do my job. We tend not to have that in Nigeria. The police, INEC, you just everybody towing the line of what they say from above. We know what happened in the US. Trump called the Secretary of State of Georgia. I need 1,000 number of votes. And the man said, no. Why are we not seeing people who are able to stand hold their own?
They?
Okay.
But there are no consequences.
Okay. You have added an additional topic to our conversation.
Trump.
But let's talk about the floods in Borno State. Borno State has established a dedicated relief fund to provide urgent assistance to those affected by the recent flooding in Maiduguri and surrounding areas. The state government says it aims to mobilize support from citizens, organizations, and international partners to alleviate the suffering of flood victims and facilitate their recovery. Maiduguri is facing its worst humanitarian disaster in decades. After more than 30 people died and over 100,000 households were displaced by severe floods. The founder and CEO of Dangote Group, Aliko Dangote, visited the city with Nasarawa State Governor Abdullahi Sule and a delegation from NNPC Limited. Dangote announced a donation of 1 billion naira to the National Emergency Management Agency and another 1 billion naira to the state government.
NEMA wrote us a letter who says we're aware, but we sat down and we approved 1 billion naira, to work with the Borno state government. And then on top of that, Aliko Dangote Foundation also put another 500 million, so that is 1.5 billion.
Thank Alhaji Aliko Dangote for all the support that he has been rendering towards uplifting the standard of living of the displaced communities in Borno State since 2009 to date. The establishment of gas power plant alone in Borno State is something that the entire people of Borno State.
Okay, the big issue about the floods in Maiduguri affecting Maiduguri and Jide local government area is that between December 2023 and June 2024, the government spent over 171 million naira because it was obvious that there was an issue with that dam, Alua Dam, it is called. So the problem was foreseeable. In July 2024, the federal government of Nigeria also provided 26 million naira for the rehabilitation of that Alua Dam. Now we are being told that even down south here, the River Niger is going to overflow its banks. The Oyon Dam will overflow its banks. This thing happens on a yearly basis because, in my view, of the incompetence, the negligence of Nigerian officials. They say it's climate change. Yes, in Europe, we have had cases of climate change causing a lot of flooding, even as far away as Japan. But here in Nigeria, it is lack of due diligence on the part of our officials. But what do you think? Do you think, well, this is an act of God? We'll be here until they will say Lagdo Dam has overflowed its banks, until they will say Oyon Dam has collapsed. They knew about Alua Dam. Now over 2,000 people, 2 million people have been affected. Over 30 people have died. Even animals were not saved. They escaped from the zoo and they died. Prisoners also, broke jail and went onto the streets. Yemi?
So you said Borno State spent 171 million? And
Yes,
then the
that
federal
was reported.
And then the federal government gave them 26 million.
Another 26 million.
And I saw a report
July.
that 2 years ago that actually been kind of an alarm raised about the state of the dam. One man has just donated 1.5 billion naira. And the point I'm trying to make is we've now displaced 2 million people, 30 people have died, we've ruined a city because we didn't prioritize it, just to your point. And this is when Mr. Ologun says we should trust government because they made a promise. And that's why I said I struggle for that, because we create problems that could have been avoided. Again, because there are no consequences. Zulum is still governor. Nothing is going to happen. And the head of the Ministry of Commission, what is it called? Ministry of Environment, the person in charge of the dam, there's no, at least I haven't seen any reported in the media that whoever was supposed to have flagged it, supposed to have made sure it was fixed, that anything would happen. So just to add to your point, and that's Borno, the scary part about it is that what we've seen in Borno, will that then stop, will that ensure that action is taken on other dams? The answer is no, is my answer. But I'd like to appeal to citizens who are watching. If you work in any of those ministries that are responsible for these dams, the cost is too high. And this is maybe a bit to what Professor Aworawo was saying, that people will do the right thing. The cost is too high for people to lose their lives because we're stealing money or we're just not doing our jobs. The cost is just too high. So for those who are involved or those who have responsibility for these things, just think about it, because water is water. I mean, what's that fella song? Water you no get enemy. You don't know where the water is going to go, and you can't control it in that sense. So even if it's for your own enlightened self-interest, so it doesn't run over a place where you live or where your loved ones live, do your job.
Mr. Logan.
Thank you very much. Let me start by commending the Dangote Foundation for those donations, and to express my concern that those donations will be used for its purpose, because that is one of the plaguing issues that we have in the country, because we lack that maintenance culture. And in public relations, when you talk about crisis management, you are either proactive or reactive. You are proactive when you prevent, but when you are reactive, you are now fighting the devastating consequences. And I hope we also get proactive by the other declarations that in some parts of the country, I know in Ogun State, the Greenbelt region, from time to time, the dam is released and a lot of issues visit the town. We call them external shock. But there was a time, a long time ago, when some investors actually were interested in the flood crisis in Nigeria, particularly from Russia. But you'll be amazed that those who should have listening ears were more interested in what they will gain from it, which is another issue. And let me also come to the point that I wasn't saying we should trust the promise of government, but that Aliko Dangote has fought a battle, bringing him to this point. So the government factor is still there. What can we learn? Look at Maiduguri. NNPC went visiting. Aliko Dangote went visiting. So what we are saying is that let their collaboration make life easier for Nigerians. And I express my deep condolence to the families who have lost loved ones and to those who have recorded losses, and advise that we should be more proactive. It shocks me when we wait for rainy season before we start clearing the drainages. A wise man said it never hurts to be prepared. And I hope that the disasters that are on the way will not be allowed to happen, so that eventually we don't say they are the acts of God. God wants us about his acts. He wants us to take charge and take control. And when we neglect the prerogative of man in ensuring that disasters are prevented, then who do we blame? So once again, my deep condolence. And for those who can donate to help the victims, why not? I advise that we do.
Very good. Prof?
Yeah, there are two things actually. The first is that some of these floods are related to climate change.
Certainly.
Scientific evidence shows that pressure has moved up, and those areas that didn't used to have a lot of rains will have so much of it this time. There was satellite imagery released a few days ago that shows that even part of the Sahara Desert, trees are now growing there, grasses are now growing there because they now have more water. So, and what that signifies is that these areas will experience more rain moving forward. So they should not just look at it as one episodic development. It's something that will happen fairly, more frequently than previously moving forward. So fixing those dams and all those things is important. The second has to do with that preparedness we have talked about. They knew this was going to happen. If rain happened to fall, if heavy rain happened to fall, the place will be flooded, but not adequate measures were taken. Climate change is available globally. People are preparing and then taking measures to tackle it. The whole of Netherlands is underwater. That's why there's a saying that God created the heavens and the earth, but the Dutch made Holland, Netherlands, because it's through management, all of those things that they're able to build. That the whole country exists. They're able to manage water, do planning here and there. Those are the kind of things we need to do, so that moving forward, we'll be able to avoid...
The basis of epistemology is man trying to conquer nature. But we have a situation in Africa in the 21st century where our leaders have just submitted themselves to the forces of nature, and they call it the act of God, out of the incompetence to master nature. So, well, we lost that on the epistemological struggle.
To be honest, I'm not even quite sure it's incompetence, to be honest. I think it's just an unwillingness and a laziness to do it. Because
what's the difference?
No, well, when I say incompetence, I guess maybe the definition is just you are unable to. You don't know how to. And I'm saying that there's a difference between not knowing how and not wanting to. And I think for me, ours is a case of not wanting to do it.
Okay. And we claim helplessness.
Yeah.
Well,
Exactly.
let's go to Uganda. Ugandan Olympic runner Rebecca Cheptegei, who died after she was doused in petrol and set alight by a former partner, was buried yesterday with full military honors. Cheptegei returned to her home in the islands of Western Kenya, an area popular with international runners for its high-altitude training facilities, after coming 44th in the marathon at the Paris Olympics on August 11. It will have been her final race. 3 weeks later, her former boyfriend, Dixon Indiema Maraganch, allegedly attacked Cheptegei as she returned from church with her 2 daughters and younger sister in the village of Kinyoro, Kenya police and her family said.
Not only is the killing of Rebecca a case of femicide, but also it's particularly a case of what we have seen happening to the athletes in Kenya. Kenya prides itself in the fact that it has a lot of training camps for athletes from across the world. And if you're going to oblige global citizens into coming into your country to pay to train within your camps, you have obligation to protect them. As soon as Rebecca was killed, but also when Tirop was killed in 2022, some of the things that have come up are the fact that a lot of these kinds of violences are happening with athletes. They get into relationships with people who particularly target them because of the profession that they're in. Because we know, if you're an athlete, of course, if you win races or even if you represent your country.
Well, she's been buried. Dixon Diema himself is also dead. He sustained, burns in the incident. In Kenya, we know that femicide, domestic violence is on the rise. And we have this latest incident of a talented woman who has been killed because of violence. Passion crime, they call it, Prof, let's start with you this time.
Well, my deepest condolences to the family, friends, and then the entire citizens of Kenya. This is tragic. How much worse can it get that one human being is setting another person ablaze? They say allegedly, but at least we can see that the lady is dead from the consequences. The law will need to be made to take its course firmly, The man is dead, but we know that the trend is that when people commit crimes like this, when the law is condign, there's maximum punishment for those who do this kind of things. It tends to deter those who do it. Beyond that, enlightenment to protect, the vulnerable, women, children, and others who are otherwise vulnerable. Here in Nigeria too, and there was a report yesterday of rising cases of wives-to-be, especially of young men, being killed by them. I think mostly for ritual purposes, sometimes or disagreements like this as well. When these things happen, the law should take its course maximally. While I also, recommend enlightenment campaign consistently. You must not allow your anger to take the better of you, and things get to this level. Now both are dead, and who benefits? Nobody does. I sympathize with government, people of Kenya, but here at home too, there are things that the government needs to pay attention to as far as all of these things are concerned, to protect the weak and vulnerable from attacks such as this.
Mr. Ologun.
It's so sad, and again, I express my condolence. And I read a story that prompted this culture of violence in Uganda. Culturally, women are seen as just stay at home and keep the house. So when you see those breaking the glass ceiling, it becomes a threat to the men that come dating them. And you can see how a brilliant life has been wasted. In the last 3 years, there had been about 3 incidents of this. And globally, I roll out my voice to say that I speak against gender violence. And thank God in Lagos State recently, there was a walk against this sexual and gender violence. What is the point in going to that extent of jungle justice? And like Prof said, the laws of the land should be executed to be preventive in nature, even though...
Nobody, Dixon, dear man is dead.
Yes,
too.
I was coming to that, doctor. He has died. But in some communities also, the grave will be chained, for people around to know that the person lying there didn't go to heaven, freely. Because when you look at what we call enculturation and influencing, some of us are speaking against this. Some young ones have been inspired on how to avenge when their emotional intelligence fails. Because what would have made you to pour fuel on someone, set the person ablaze, and it's really, really, really a tragic experience. And once again, she has parents, she has children, and I pray that God will give the family the strength needed to bear these great loss. And Ugandan government admitted that it was failure on the part of the government, not just the government, but the community also. And I hope that we also in Nigeria learn from this in orientating people to have what we call emotional intelligence. And of course, for those who go into relationships, please go into them prayerfully. Not all those who come trying to get close to you are sincere about the relationship, but what they can gain. And when these gains are threatened, they can go violent. Because, Prof, I connect with your concern. This ritual killing is a tough one in this nation, again, right now. So, condolence to the family and the Ugandan government.
Mr. Ologun, I see you are also among the pastors. You have spoken like a pastor. But let me come to Yemi, Adamolekun. Femicide, gender violence.
Yeah, my condolences to the family. Quite painful to lose a child under such circumstances. And then when the perpetrator then also goes, it also almost kind of removes the focus of your anger, if I want to use that word. I like the clip that was played, and responsibility on if a country decides to open its borders to people to train, then there is a responsibility to protect the people who are there, and particularly female athletes.
RSP, in international law.
Particularly female athletes who are also more prone to violence. And just, to parallel that to the point you made about Lagos, beyond the walk, Lagos, and I'll give this to Lagos State, has done an excellent job in setting up from an office to now a commission against sexual and gender-based violence that's headed by Lola Vaivadini, and they do excellent work, excellent work she and her team do excellent work. So just anyone listening, and I think other states have been trying to complement, duplicate, copy rather, that's the word I'm looking for, to emulate, thank you, the English word, to emulate what is happening in Lagos, but they do excellent work. But just a slight caveat to that is the fact that there's a nice thing to set up these things, but then the next step that state governments need to do is actually fund them. So you can have great ideas on how to protect women, but if you don't put budget in them for a helpline, a call center, rape kits, investigations, if they're cases of then it kind of makes, or shelters, halfway homes for people who need to come out of abusive relationships. That then puts structure behind the mouthing of the fact that we're trying to protect women. And the Senate is also trying to play some fast play with the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Bill, which was passed, I guess, a few years ago. But then we've also spent incredible amounts of time, so let me not say we, women-focused NGOs that have been tangentially involved in, have spent incredible amounts of time and money going state to state. As we know, you pass a law at the federal level, at state government, we say it has to be domesticated. So they've spent incredible amounts of money domesticating it across the country. I think of our 36 states, 20-odd states have domesticated it. Now you want to repeal and reenact it, which means we start over again. And so, again, for senators who hopefully are back from vacation, why are we spending time and energy on this? Thank you. Okay,
let's take one more subject and we draw the curtain on today's program. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says she believes that another debate with former President Donald Trump will serve the interests of Americans a lot more, saying we owe it to voters to have another debate. Speaking at a rally in Charlotte, North Carolina, 2 days after she met the Republican on stage for the first time on Tuesday, Harris said Trump showed in the debate that he has no plans for how he will address the needs of the American people because it's all about him. It's not about you, she said. Her comments came minutes after Trump rejected another matchup. Vice President Harris also mocked Trump for saying he has concepts of a plan to replace the Affordable Care Act, laughing as she quoted the billionaire from Tuesday night debate. Quickly, very quickly, because we're running out of time. Professor Aworawo, I'm sure you watched the debate. Mr. Ologun, I'm sure you watch it. Yemi, I'm sure you have followed the debate in the United States. Trump says no more debates. We'll go to the polls on November 5. But what do you think of the last debate that they had?
I think it was a good debate. Both sides presented their positions. It was feisty, as expected. There wasn't much love in the city of brutally love. That is Philadelphia. But, of course, the consensus is that Harris had the upper hand. It wasn't a knockout punch, but he had the upper hand. Even Trump himself will admit that because he's a good one. He doesn't say those things very frequently to the other side. Good one.
When they met at the memorial.
Yes, a good one.
At the 9/11 memorial.
Yeah, so it's understandable why Trump would not want another one, because if Harris does still far better than she did in the last one, then it will give her a huge advantage over him. But it was a good debate, and Harris did well. She spoke to the issues and presented, her program very clearly.
But will it make any difference, considering that American election is about the electoral college, not necessarily popularity?
Yes.
Not about polls, not about debates.
Exactly. But when the in many 7 states, swing states,
the swing states.
Yes, they are very close to each other.
Arizona,
ability to get just a
Michigan,
couple of
Wisconsin.
Exactly. A couple of votes to your side could just make the difference. Just a few votes. I mean, when Trump called the Secretary of State of Georgia, Just a few thousand votes, and it will have just been where he will have been president. So the few, and there are so many undecided voters that this kind of ideas will sway one way or the other.
Okay, your take, Mr. Ologun.
We've heard from Harris' end. Let's hear from Trump's end. According to Trump, when a prize fighter loses, he or she calls for another debate. So Trump is saying that it's because she felt she didn't do very well that she's calling for another debate. And that there was an earlier one with Fox News that she didn't show up. And that,
That's
you
not
know,
true, though.
you know Trump,
I'm just saying, for the benefit of our audience, that's not true.
Trump will roll out whatever he needs to roll out. And I must say that watching that debate, Harris focused on issues and Trump was in his usual manner.
Well, she was
trying
really evasive. She
exactly.
wasn't addressing most of the questions. But she succeeded in baiting Trump.
Exactly. And then, like you said, Doctor, the American election is highly unpredictable. I was in the U.S. when Trump engaged Hillary Clinton, and from the debates and the running
But
around,
she won the popular vote.
it was as if it was going to be Hillary, but somehow it went the other way. And this time around, we wish Americans the best, and I wish debate can determine electoral victories. So we are watching.
Yemi Adamolekun for Kamala Harris.
No, not at all. I think my
Expectedly.
No, actually, neither way. I think my own is just for the value of debates. And to your point about voting, a gentleman who's called the last, I think, 17 elections or whatever it was, has called that she would win. However, that comes up. But my point really is about the value of debates and their ability to see how people behave under pressure. I mean, Dr. Abati just made the point that she evaded some critical questions, but she stood her ground and she was able to put Trump in a corner. But we still don't have that culture in Nigeria, and similar things, different things sway how people vote. But we need to build that culture where candidates can come forward and boldly speak to their record and boldly speak to their plans. And we will get there. It's something I'm personally very passionate about. And I look forward to a time where the two leading presidential candidates will stay on a stage and have a conversation like we haven't had since 1993.
Well, very good note to end this conversation. Lessons for Nigeria. Because in Nigeria, presidential candidates, they run away when you ask them to come and debate. There's one candidate in Edo election next week who has refused to come and tell us.
But you are looking for trouble.
Their godfathers have been speaking, firing missiles.
We want the candidates to speak for themselves.
The ones going to be governing.
So that the people of Edo will hear from them. Yeah. Next week, Sunday, certainly, we'll be looking at the elections in Edo State. You've been watching This Day Live, the Sunday talk show, here on Arise News. I'm Ruben Abati. From our entire team here in Lagos, it's bye for now, and thank you very much for watching.